Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Disclosure in the Media. I'm here with Ryan Polenkarns, and he's airing at this time from Italy. We
Yeah,
are,
hey everybody.
huh?
Hey everybody. Yeah, live from the middle of Tuscany.
Yeah, from his dorm there at doing his archaeological assignments over there. So today's topic is actually quite interesting. It's about basically the topic of Chim, the zero summoning, and what was the third one, Ryan?
The Dreamer,
Dreamer.
which is sort of the big question of the Elder Scrolls lore, like deep. But we're gonna start with Kim. And so this little graphic that Chris has kindly put up, because the internet here is very poor and I wouldn't be able to be doing this if I had to do that as well. It basically explains how one gets to the point where they either zero sum or get to Kim. So basically, when you start out, there's the I am, and like God is the gods, or whatever divine thing that they know of is an other from them. Essentially, the way a lot of people in religion see it. Or at least certain religions see it. And then there's this sort of self-God where like you initiate the idea that God, you are part of God, or you are a God in your own right. And that basically is that like early stage coming to this realization that you are the self-God, but you're not like, there's still a separation. It's like you're part of a God. Or if you think that you're a God, you basically, you know that you're part of a God, but you don't realize that you yourself are also the God. Like you yourself have the same abilities as a God.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's this point where it then branches off afterward, is when you realize that you yourself are part of a God. Like, and you have the same abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Then the issue that arises, because all the first, from the first one to the second one is like a big leap. The second one to the third one is sort of like once they kind of have been in that second state long enough to realize that they can change things, that's what happens. So then to go down to Kim, it's like I am a God, but I am able to be the God. And that is, or at least take on this God that I am's power, right? And that is Kim. Kim takes an incredibly large ego as well. Basically a will of your, but not an ego kind of in the way that we see it. It's more of like a will that you are as you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then zero sum is basically where you realize you are part of a God, but the version of you that is you have this like self dilemma that like where you kind of come to this almost realization that you, like the version of you that's you, doesn't matter. So like your personality and your will and like what your mundane existence held before doesn't matter at all, because the God is everything and you're just a piece of everything. That's kind of the way that people who zero sum will see it. And that basically, when you zero sum, you kind of just get out of existence. Like you just rejoin the ethereal matter that is existence. And you just, you completely zero sum. Like it's just like you just simply are at that point, but you don't have like any kind of physical, mental form anymore, because you've already adopted the power of that God and the power of that like full God consciousness. Then because you decided that you don't exist, basically. You know what I'm saying? That's what zero sum is. Technically, there is a stage past Kim where they realize that all of this universe is a dream, and that's the dreamer is the person that is the dreaming it, right?
Mhm.
And that stage beyond, because the Elder Scrolls lore, and it's like one of its darkest, most crazy theories, is that a being that has achieved Kim then can like get outside the dream. That's the easiest way to explain it. They can literally like,
Yeah,
hypothetically
step
speaking,
outside the
they,
con. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then become part of a new reality where the dreamer is, or become a new dreamer of their own universe.
Okay, this actually makes a lot of sense because this is something we've been looking into the oversoul physics and everything, and this also goes into the law of one sort of thing. You know, when one is harmed, all are harmed; when one is helped, all are helped. Whereas you are essentially all one. But in this, the self God, this is actually quite interesting because of the fact that yes, you are you here and but the oversoul, one could say, where like you say in the Kim, all are we. This is actually quite interesting. Where like say Toran Kal, my oversoul, he encompasses a great number of expressions and dimensional selves and parallel universal selves as well. I came to find out. At the same time, I still am me, and I am still here and I can actualize as a self God. Yes, there is a bit of ego involved in this. So some of the new age philosophy is that you have to shed the ego. In that instance, it's not completely true where you have to integrate everything as balanced and basically don't cross over into ego. You have to have confidence and confidence and arrogance tend to ride the line together a little bit. With this, though, with the oversoul, I came to find out that the avatars for the oversoul are actually conducting audit here as you're going through life. There's very few exceptions to this, and what happens is you're learning and gathering codes and codexes to send back to that oversoul so that they can expand themselves and create a whole, basically dream a whole universe into existence if they wanted to as well. And this happened when we were speaking to Frank Frazetta, the famous artist. He said when he came here in his human form, he basically said, he goes, I came in here with my own mission, with my own will, and inserted myself into the artistic community to evolve that at the time that it was needed. Then he carried those creations back with him, and he created what he called Frazetta World within his Oversoul. He was essentially the representation then of the entirety of Oversoul. That changed. That actually changed once he brought back that self God presence from what he established down here, and which I found very, very interesting. Ooh, somebody doesn't want me to talk about this subject, but side of my eyes started to hurt right there because they don't want this subject talked about. Whereas some of the New Age philosophy got it wrong. They did the reverse of this, where you're taking away power. Christianity also wanted to give away. Other world religions wanted to give away the power and not turn into a self god, and eventually turn into that dreamer presence. So they got the physics wrong. Also, I came to find out that sometimes as the Kim here, we can actually do things that the oversoul could not. And some people find this very hard to believe because you're they one piece of a much larger God. But say that larger oversoul is entangled in something that it should not be, and that you as the avatar, you as you here, the I am me here, I am presence here, knows that that's not correct. You are actually starting to correct the damage that the oversoul generated on itself throughout ancient history and through creation history. There's a very great example in a show years ago. I bring this up all the time associated with this. The most beautiful example of this is in Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, whereas all the spaceships in it are artificial intelligence consciousnesses in it, big artificial intelligence consciousnesses, and they have three components. They have an avatar human, and they have a holographic like self, and then they have the bigger thing. They chose to do the Trinity with that. What happened was there was this one character that came into it. I can't remember the name of the character per se, but he was the avatar for one of the ship consciousnesses. He was the physical human android representation. What happened was he falls in love with the avatar of Andromeda, the ship Andromeda, and this precipitated him really knowing who he was, even if the bigger consciousness was more infected or more compromised. When you get introduced to the overall consciousness of that guy's vessel, what happens is he's insane. Something happened to him over a 300-year period that drove him insane, or longer. And what took place was the main character named Captain Hunt he says to the crew, he goes, I believe this ship's avatar knew what his true self was and his true mission was all along. And that was actually a profound statement, because that Chim's, or that avatar's self, I am presence, knew something the greater oversoul had forgotten, because the two had pretty much kind of separated, and what was left was the good portion. I've been told I've done this with myself on many occasions in multiple lifetimes. Like, I've split into different personality or avatar types, as well as in this one. Crumb made a comment last time we spoke to him. He said this to Toran Kal. He goes, "Oh, your human self has more tact and more intelligence than you do." You know, he said that to Toran Kal, and meaning that that I seem to be utilizing a particular talent that is now kind of separated from the rest of the whole. Not separated, that's the wrong choice of word, just been either slightly partitioned or slightly compartmentalized, and it's being used to perform a particular task here. But then now Toran Kal can't completely access it, except through me, as I choose when I enter my own Chim type of state, or self-actualization here. So there is a separation here, just like Joanna she goes, I like you, but I don't like Toran Kal. And that sounds weird because we're the same being. But
you're gonna mantle him.
I'm going to what?
You're going to end up mantling him. That's interesting.
Okay, to describe what mantling is.
Basically, you become him and you meld.
Okay.
But basically, the soul self is evolved, and you're going to end up becoming like that new
okay. Oh, because he's compartmentalized too many things, and it has to.
Yeah. That's what I think. That's what like is being hinted at in some of these interactions, because it's that but I also think that there's some kind of universal thing where it's like, if a soul can grow more in an expression lifetime, that mantles the old one that doesn't serve you and like doesn't serve it as much, because the souls are just trying to learn.
Yes, I completely agree. Everybody that's around me now is completely agreeing with you on that one. To see the way this is set up, usually, as you say, you have the overall library, which is Toran Kal and the multiple expressions. Then you have the one stage down where he manifested as the giant self, 150-foot giant self, around billions of years ago. When the Earth was first evolving, he came in as that avatar consciousness along with Chrome, and they came into a blava state. Fast forward millions of years to, or billions of years to, where they gain bone and musculature, and in that way, and eventually start to gain this physical form. Then fast forward to Atlantis, where I know the Toran Kal was a member of the Atlantean Council at that time. I fast forward past billions of years of history just now, mind you, but that's hard for people to understand because of certain evolution. Those giants were the first ones on the primordial Earth a long time ago. But this mantling, that makes a lot of sense, because there's been this weird partition where certain things just are not accessible to Toran Kal. Now, the overall library, you have him, and then you have me, which is like, say, an electrical plant dialed down to a substation, dialed down to a house, essentially. And there comes the three. in there right there, like what was presented in Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda with the three aspects of the AI they had. Granted, I'm not adding AI that part into it. I just know Torrent Kal got involved. The same thing with Joanna's self, La Seren, got involved with an area of space called the Void, and it completely messed up both of our paths to where a complete audit was necessary. The Void is like basically this demon trap prison that constantly fluctuates. And people have thought in history they could interact with the Void and control it and make changes here. It is basically a Rubik's Cube that can never be solved. And it's basically the epitome of insanity and the embodiment.
If you turn it, it's already turning.
Yeah, you turn it, it's turned you in return. And it's like, and it's this constant melding of a Rubik's Cube and a situation that is unsolvable because it's not supposed to be solved. And it drives you insane. I was telling this to Joanna yesterday. It's like in Harry Potter, where Dumbledore said many men sat in front of that mirror and constantly were trying to either see the future or to gain some kind of power. And it was basically a constant revolution of a reflection of a self that was unsolvable, or a riddle that was unsolvable. It's the same difference. This also goes with Odin and the Well of Ood, tossing the eye into the Well of Ood. The Well of Ood was the Void. And
yeah, but there is a way to solve it. I just picked up on a way to solve it.
Yeah, but many people have tried and gone insane. And it's like,
no, it's because you can't actually solve it by doing anything to it.
Yes, it's within the self always, and then that solves the oversoul. The codexes go back to the oversoul, and that resolves it here. You can't resolve it there. So it's like,
no, it's like you move with it. If you try to push against it, it just throws you back in, but in like a random place.
Yes, exactly. And we've had to put these demon selves that we acquired in the ancient past back into the Void. It's essentially a prison. You open the door, it has these magical glyphs, and you put this demon thing back into a wall, and it gets trapped with an never-ending revolving like maze. And it's a dark black tower that constantly is moving. It's essentially a lighthouse, but also a warning to anybody trying to interact with it. And Chrome has helped me out several occasions with this. I was told never interact with it again. But also I found out the micro version of this is this, if anybody's also ever heard of the Winchester Mystery House in California. The person that made this and said that basically the ghosts of those that died at the hand of the Winchester rifle were forever haunting her, and she was told by a psychic constantly build. Well, not only does this confuse ghosts, it confuses demons. This is the same configuration the Void uses. This constant shifting of stairwells and constant shifting of spaces and everything will confuse anything that goes in there, including a human. You know, I went in there. There's a window not 5 feet from you, but you can't get out of the space. And ceiling is like here, you're cramped in. It's meant to cause confusion. The Void is the essence of confusion. So it's like, that's like the macro and the micro. And what I mean by macro and micro is as above, so below. You have a smaller micro version of a macro concept, and that's a basis for all magic, and that can shift too. And that's why it has to be resolved here and not there. And this is exactly why Torrent Kal is so messed up. And this is why we have that compartmentalization. I like the term mantling. That's very interesting, the fusion of the two back together. And this would cause an ultimate like Chim state, or like what you were saying, self-God zero sum. This is what would bring that about. And basically becoming whole here. Like what you hear Viking and me always say, bringing in more of your oversoul. But it's not quite that simple. It's basically becoming the self-God here and correcting all that needs to be audited and corrected here. And this, I know that's probably confusing to some people listening, because people think the oversoul is the epitome of the wisdom. No, it is not. It is you become that, and then you correct and fuse all of that here. It's not like it just flows into you. Do the shadow work and you do the inner work, all of that, but you bring it all together here. And it's also impossible to bring in the entire library here. You can bring in the understanding and the access to that library and become one here. But the human body is not capable of holding all of that. That's why you were saying that like in that whole zero sum state, it's like a drop of water in the ocean, like this says, where you go back to that. But the only farce with that is there is a trick in this as well. There's an Orion trick wrapped in this as well, where people think, oh, I'm going to lose my self-identity and rejoin with a source creator. No, you want to keep your self-actualized identity, but you want to be able to bring all of you into it. You are still you. Like I am still Chris Jacobs, but I'm still here doing my thing. This is my given name here. Doesn't mean I have to lose that identity. It just gets added back into the whole, and I can still keep that identity, like what Frank Frazetta did. When I asked him what his oversoul name was, he just said, call him Frank.
It's like putting on a mask.
Huh?
Like putting on a mask.
Yeah, essentially like putting on a mask, but it's one that becomes you. Like any mask that you wear over time, does it not become us? That's also another lesson that Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda put in play as well. There was a phrase there, the one that dons a mask long enough, does it not become you and does not become us? So yes, you can use that and bring it back to the oversoul in a positive way and transform it in a positive way. But it also, because of the void, it can be transformed in a negative way as well. And I've seen both with mine. I hope everybody understood that, but that's the way I've downloaded it and understood what was actually going on. It's interesting where you compared it to mantling. I'm going to have to remember that now, because that's actually a key component to what I've been seeing happening with Toran Kal. So yeah, a very key component.
My like I've just kind of like I just instantly picked up on that being like that's just how it was.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And Joanna does not like Toran Kal in his current form. She thinks he's brash, arrogant, and unpredictable. And but through me, it seems to be balanced. But if that mantling fully takes place, the way it's supposed to, all of that.
Then it's like you basically picked up his best qualities, or he picked up yours. You melded.
Yeah. And essentially, since we're the same being, that makes sense how that would happen. We discard all the qualities that don't serve any longer. So, or at least curb it, and control it. Yeah. So, and then that's very
okay, that's the thing that happens after you, like, before you write a new soul contract to come back in to learn more.
Okay. Where you agree to have that mantling taking place as you're going, or the audit taking place. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Because it's essentially of an audit of both of them that then merges them back together as one. Because because even though it's like it's like a bifurcated piece off being reintegrated into a whole, but then like kind of also taking control of the whole.
Okay. Yes, you're correct. Yeah, I'm getting a yes to that over and over again. So that's actually I'm glad this subject came up today, because this explains it quite well, where I've had a hard time kind of explaining the process because of that confusion. And now that this is taking place, I believe that's grounded the very meaning of this. So that's actually quite good. I'm getting thumbs up from who's actually here. Okay, yeah, that Ben Orklo is the one that's going to talk today. I just got a thumbs up today. So that's really good. I think we've done good on this subject, this part of the subject. What did you want to add to this before we switch the graphic?
Oh yeah, you can switch the graphic to the one of Vivek.
Oh, this one. All right.
Yes. So because I'm going to do it in order of when they achieved Chim, and Vivek did it before Tiber Septim was born. So yes, in the Elder Scrolls lore, there's only 2 recorded ever like instances of Chim having been like actually achieved. One of them is Vivek, who was one of the tribunal, the warrior poet of the tribunal. He's often referred to as that. He has always been also like this, the weird one of the tribunal, in the fact that the other 2 seemed fairly like basic in their intentions and what they believed. And Vivek is like a turbulent sea of just emotional spectrum and power. I personally believe that in this transaction, when they became the man gods of Morrowind, Vivek really became like the man god, and like the other two were lesser beings in like understanding of the universe and stuff. So, but Vivek only after becoming a divine reached that Chim stage. He only reached Chim like 1,000 years after he himself even became a divine. And that's that whole like self god part taking over, even though he had the ability of the god for that whole period. That self god, but like in those moments where this new god is like this new immortal being with like unlimited magical potential and stuff, was in his like meditative stage between things that he did in the mundane world. He then realized this whole self god issue and then reached Chim. But Vivek is of the kind of being where you can see Vivek is split in two. Like during the Curse of the Dark Elves, he took both of the traits of the Chimer and the Dunmer, and has taken them both. He's taken just like the soul takes in the best portions of both. He did the same. Whereas Amalexia stayed Chimer, and Sothis Sil, we really don't know what happened to him because you never see his like skin. So as a result, but anytime that you have seen his skin, he is shown as a Dunmer. So, and that's only
because like he fused the Chimer and the Dunmer together like that, just like some of these combination beings, rather kind of where they fuse those traits, those traits.
Together. Yeah, I'm saying like literally, he took the best aspects of the Chimer and the Dunmer, and in that transaction. So that's very apt for what we were just talking about. But also the fact that when the Nerevarine prophecy comes to pass in the events of Morrowind, he's the only one of Sothis Sil is killed by Amalexi, who's afraid, and is trying to pin you as the one that killed him, because that's like the whole thing is that like the Nerevarine will kill off the tribunal as penance for them desecrating this like the heart of Lorcan. Technically, Lorcan is another character that Chief Chim, but Lorcan was already kind of a divine that was connected to the Dreamer, so we don't know exactly what happened there. Because Lorcan is literally like the Dreamer dreamed in two things into existence, and Lorcan was one of them. So Lorcan is its own topic that we'll address when we get to Tiber Septum. But basically, Vivek is the only one that's like, this is you. You will eventually kill me, but it never mentions when you're going to kill me. And the Nerevarine who gets Corporus and then basically is able to be saved, both become immortals. And it's basically implied that the two of them go off to Akavir after the events of Morrowind and are like best friends again. Because Indral Nerevar and Vivek, prior to becoming Vivek the Man God, were best friends. And yeah, it's kind of like they go off into the sunset as these two immortal beings after the events of the game. And eventually, yes, the Nerevarine will end up just killing Vivek because he has to. But it'll be like, it's like one of those end of the world time frame type things. Because like, it's something that has to happen for the world to progress, but it's not something that has to happen now. Like they're just staying off the inevitable and hanging out until that point.
Oh yeah. There's like I've seen this inevitable end of the world thing in a lot of different games, a lot of different writings and everything. People knows the apocalypse or fake alien invasion, things of that nature. It's taken on that twist now, but it's up to us also to ground something else and to prevent that. Like they keep advertising that that's inevitable. Plus, also, which it isn't. This is why the whole 2012 thing was undone. This is why the whole big one earthquake timeline, the Edgar Casey timeline, where he said part of North American continent, the United States, would sink into the ocean, and Atlantis would rise on it. This is why that has been abated in that area. But this I find interesting. Also, I've been seeing in my head different like cartoons and different different movies and such where beings have fused into one as well, where they become a brand new being. Like I was seeing a skit from the show Dragon Ball Z, for instance, where the two characters fused into one being. Like Goku and Vegeta merged, and then there was Trunks and I believe it was Gotenk also merged.
Yeah.
And then also the show Reboot years ago, where there was this where you had the character of Bob, where he fused with his little device as well, and that was that was more AI, but these are the things that popped into my head a moment ago, where you can take two completely different beings and also shed the codes that don't serve, and then fuse them back in together. But I'm also being told that sometimes those are two beings that are of the same oversoul that are coming together as well, like dimensional selves that are living in the same space time, and they come together. One other aspect of this is the multiverse. I won't get fully into the multiverse. That's a whole 10 shows in and of itself. But
are you kind of referring to when Mandela effects fold back in?
Yes. And there was a scene in Earth Final Conflict, Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict, whereas a parallel universe self of a woman met with the one that was here, and they began to, the Mandela effect began to fuse them together. So there wasn't like a temporal incursion that took place. And same difference. It's a type of Mandela effect. They can be parallel universe versions of themselves that can fuse. That is, if they haven't conditioned themselves for that not to happen. Through a process, whereas they're conditioned to be in the universe they're entering. Star Trek did this, to whereas you can enter a corridor and it would condition you properly, so that didn't happen. But this Earth Final Conflict kind of touched on that too. But this also would apply to dimensional selves fusing. Also, I'm being told another concept is where when you attune your body and get that like get in shape or purge all toxins, this aids in that integration process even easier. So yeah, that's I know that was a lot in the last few minutes. I won't go into the multiverse thing. I've done a series of recordings on the multiverse of madness from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not going to bombard people with it here, but I record stuff when I figure out things, and I'll put that on our subscription at some point. But this also applies to the multiverse as well, from what I can understand.
All right, yeah. So Vivek, that's kind of how Vivek used Kim to kind of. He was just like, I know my fate. This is what's going to be my fate. It was prophesized, and I know the prophecy is true. I am Vivek. I am God. We are God. All is God, kind of thing that he would have said. Mm-hmm. But Vivek has this very strong personality. I mean, he was always referred to as the hermaphrodite, like, and he takes on the role that he needs in the moment. Mm-hmm. So, and the only reason I call him a he is because like, it's more of an like, he's more of an it, but it doesn't really make sense. Because he refers to himself as a he, because there's still a bit of that ego self there.
Yeah.
So because of the kid, like you wouldn't have the Kim if you didn't have that ego, you didn't have that will to keep yourself in, like that to realize that you are, and
to ground your true self here. Yeah. Reach that.
So that if you didn't have that, you would have zero summed and then just became primordial matter again. So yeah. That was Vivek. Now you can go to type the Talos one.
Okay. Oh, I gotta this. There we go. All right.
So Talos himself, Tiber Septim, is an amalgamation of many things. And as a result, we know Tiber Septim achieved Kim. But the whole Talos Tiber Septim thing is really iffy as to like, if he is really like Talos, the god, is the amalgamation of the man Tiber Septim who achieved Kim, Ismir Wolfhearth, and Zernarctus. Some people say, other people say no, he's just a dragonborn Tiber Septim that then achieved Kim and died. But it's very clear that Talos may be Shazarine, where he's part of Lorcan, essentially. Like, exerting his will, but there's also evidence that he could be part of Anu. And if he's part of both, then he is essentially like part of the two primordial beings that like created everything.
Mm. Okay.
And would also mean that he's a stand-in for the Dreamer, because when those two energies come together, they're essentially the Dreamer again. So he could be a stand-in for the Dreamer, and the whole achieving Kim thing would have just been a logical step. And then, so if he is like the return of the Dreamer, then technically he's the Dreamer actively like working on Nern, which means he didn't achieve Kim perfectly because he is Kim and he was shaping the world. But the reason why he's always referred to as having reached Kim is there's this line is that he achieved Kim and turned the jungle of Cyrodiil into the temperate zone it is today. And we've played the Elder Scrolls Online. We know Cyrodiil's temperate already, so we believe it's like the political jungle is when he reached Kim. He just made Cyrodiil like into this place that would just stay stable so that an empire could re-arise there. And as a result, he had an empire that's lasted generations.
He just stabilized the energy, stabilized the environment, so that it was possible to.
Then he achieved godhood afterward, and like recognized godhood, where he wasn't just like equated as like a saint to one of the divines, but instead he actually had like worship. Like he joined the pantheon essentially, in a very Roman emperor type way, but he joined the pantheon, and I personally have this idea now that he's more actually just the dreamers acting through these two energies coming together. It's very similar to where in like Naruto and Sasuke are like two halves of like all of creation, like power, like chakra energy, and they to beat that ultimate being, they actually have to come together because they are like each half of that ultimate being in themselves. So that's kind of the whole Talos Kim thing, as well as kind of what we think Talos could be as well. Like Talos is very hard because the origin story is very convoluted and stuff as well. But needless to say, if Talos is the Dreamer acting through intervention like that, it's almost certainly said that the character you play in Skyrim is also the Dreamer actively shaping the world, not because they're a Dragonborn, but because they actively hold off one of those halves of creation's choice for how they would end creation.
Okay.
So I'm going to go that far out, and that's a lore theory that most people wouldn't ever make, and you'd have to know these like metaphysical concepts before you could even like make that. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, though the developers will probably never confirm that, I think that's actually what's going on in some of those super deep lore writer minds.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you on that. There's also another concept that is very similar. If anybody's played the game Kingdoms of Amalur, where I've done some little recordings on this, I won't bombard the listener with that either. But there is a concept called the Fateless One that comes in, where the person that's in basically the whole society in that world of Amalur believes in the weaves of fate, that nothing escapes the weaves of fate. And your character is basically prophesied to die. Well, then he comes back, or whichever you play, male or female, comes back, and you are essentially outside of that weave. You can completely control the aspects of the weave, just like you run into these beings called Fae, which they're essentially like elves and Orions and Tuatha. Essentially, they're called Tuatha in this, and they reflect the Fomorian Tuathan conflicts a lot in this game. But what happens is they have their locked stories that they exist in. You have literally the ability to change their narratives and rewrite somebody's fated narrative to where they will either live or die in it, based on outside of what their contract is, outside of what their weave actually is, and it completely throws off the rest of the weave to where it helps people become more sovereign outside of the weave. And it throws everybody for a loop going, we didn't think this was possible. This is because it was a system that was evolving. It needed something from the outside to dream something else into existence or to recreate it And that game is basically similar to this, where you needed another variable to come in, and essentially like in Skyrim, where you get rid of Alduin, where the people think, again, this goes back to the apocalypse concept, where people figured, okay, this is just a natural, uh, uh, basically reconfiguring of the universe. And the Dragonborn comes along and goes, no, I like this world too much. I'm keeping it in intact. So essentially, that's why you could say that was prophesized or fated too. One could argue that as well, just like with the fateless one, we would say, isn't it the fate of the person to be fateless? But that just goes into a weird loop paradox that your head would explode. But it's just like how Parthenex and the Dragonborn are talking back and forth, and he's saying, would you deny the next egg from existing? And the Dragonborn, you can have the Dragonborn say, I like the world the way that it is. The next egg can tend to itself. That's a very human or mortal way of seeing things. It's also like in the movie The Eternals, when you have the Eternals essentially helping a world gain population to actually feed a celestial that would be born of the egg of the earth, but all the population dies as this being feeds on the soul energy. This the main god character that's in a celestial god in it, or black hole like god in, is named Ashram, and Ashram talks to the Eternals throughout ancient history, guiding them towards this. I see him as evil because he's just consuming whole worlds of people, building the populations just to kill them to make one celestial born. But one could argue that was also the form of the routine of the universe to have a celestial be reborn and then die and create other planets, sort of thing. But I feel that evil was outside of that, mind you. That was also what was being hinted at as well. But it's still the same concept. But where a black hole consumes planets because it is actually reforming part of the universe. But the character of Ashram, I believe, had his own agenda in it, was basically evil intended, as were some of the other Celestials. But outside of that concept, that was more of like a Lucian concept there, or Orion, like harvest concept. But outside of that, you have the natural rebirth, and death of the universe. That's also how the Fae are in Kingdoms of Amalur. They see themselves as the embodiments of the seasons, of spring and winter, and they see the seasons revolving, birth and death. That's what their stories are about. But they implied that you could literally change the seasons and change the way that even the Earth function, or planets function, or things of that nature. And also Talos being the combinations of these two concepts, also possible being Lorcan. This actually makes a lot of sense in that area, where literally you have the dreamer, and then you could also step outside and dream your own reality into place, like how Frazetta was telling us, where he could form his own planet and form his own universe from that creation, and even take his like artistic creations and have it be just its own universe. That's how creativity steps in. You're literally dreaming those things into existence. There's one example I will use. I won't, again, burden the person listening to this with me going rattling on like this, but one thing that I actually made a mistake on myself in this area. There is. I'll explain this experiment that was done by paranormal investigators, and then I'll explain what I did. There is a concept, just exactly like the Dreamer, where you can form your own character creation into existence. Their experiment was where they would create a character, like a character creation, from birth, having his own childhood, all the way up to adulthood. And then they were using our current technology to see if they could summon the presence that they just wrote into existence, and see if they could get that summoning to speak. Now, a mimic or demon could easily take that creation and use it, because we ourselves are creators, they are not, and they want us to create crap for them. They could easily do this. But with this in its standalone concept, what they did was they got this character to speak back, and they actually brought this character to life. And also others have done this with fictional characters. Like I've even had demons try to show up to taking the form of Geralt of Rivia from The Witcher. So it's like, no, I know you're a fictional character,
Yeah.
But aside from that, I've even managed to get fictional characters to talk on the Ghost Box before. And this is why it is so important for people writing stories to write an ending, because this is why you have the cabal canceling TV series and movie series and everything out there, making these weird variations, because they're trying to not close the circle on the energy and to keep it open-ended and causing a bunch of frigging uh, thought forms and chaos. It's just like there was this talk about the closing of a circle, and I've said this on other shows too. I'll get back to what I did here in a moment, but uh, they showed this on this Unexplained episode where they were showing this MMA fight where there was a person in the audience that prevented the closing of the circle ceremony they do in all fights, and eventually the chaos spread to the audience from the fight, and it spread out into the street, and it caused a street riot. And that it built up exponentially. That's why closing of the circle and making an end to your character or uncreating a character is uncreating that energy is so important too. What these experimenters did was they unwrote the character. They de-aged it back to a nothing. And this is what I do when I get rid of demons. I put them in a net, a box, or a dome, and I basically say nothing net, nothing cube, or nothing dome, and I say uncreate you, and I uncreate it back to the molecule itself or to the point of its origin. This sends by that construct sends whatever is not needed here back to the void, and I'm not interacting with the void. The rest of it is converted back to nature, converted to nature energy. What the mistake I made in this area was I started letting a story run in my head, allowing something to try to create through me, either through fantasy or through just imagination. And I allowed this creation to come to life. I saw this whole scenario with this red-haired lady, that was how can I put it? Where I was basically seeing this person being born, getting to their 20s and 30s age, and forming a relationship with this person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Played this whole story out. What took place after this was a weird set of circumstances that I didn't know that I had created. This being that now had been created was literally haunting the house. And literally, where I could literally see the person transparent like any other being. I thought it was a fairy at first. Then I realized it was of my own creation. I said, I am very sorry that I inadvertently created you. I now have to deconstruct you. And I did. Unfortunately, this being begged for its life. I hated this. I hated this part. And I deconstructed it back to the molecule and got rid of it and said, I now uncreate and deconstruct my own construct. And essentially, it's the same as a poltergeist energy where you piece together different things. But it's also a poltergeist in the truest sense where you're haunting yourself. A piece of you created this haunting. Well, this I deconstructed it, and everything was fine after that. But Frank Frazetta told me when he came through, he goes, you could have left this being as it were, not to guilt you or anything like that. Just remember in the future if this happens. The being, you could have sent it on somewhere and it would have created its own reality. It was just food for thought for the future, And also, Joanna in her head has these creepy stories that play out where demonic entities or AI will try to create a dark narrative. And I said this also on one of hers and my shows too, where they tried in my head, where they tried to get me to see her as dying all the time. And what I did was, when I saw this story playing out, very similar to the other one with the woman, I let it play to a certain extent, and then I changed and inverted the ending of it and allowed it to play out where I brought her back to life and everything was fine. You would have swore I would have basically disemboweled some demon somewhere, and they were screaming their head off because they were hoping I would have left that open-ended, and they would have been able to fill the gaps in. And I filled the rest of it in and closed it. And and I said, nice try, and eventually it closed that off. I've never seen that narrative in my head since. So once it's closed off, it's closed off. But the point of me bringing all of this up, I'll round this off, is you can create your own reality. You can be the dreamer for your own reality, co-create, creativity, passion, any of that. You can create your own reality and ground it. You just have to be careful what you create, what you conjure, what you haunt yourself with. Like if you have some inner work to do, and if it's suppressed, it can create a poltergeist, whereas you're haunting yourself. So you have to bring resolve to these loose ends, so nothing else can try to use you as a conduit, negative conduit like that, to create their own reality. They're incapable of it except you through as a conduit. Like, since you technically are that avatar for the rest of you, they want a greater maybe infection to take place, or a greater denigration of your own story to take place, so that correction out there doesn't happen. So, but at the same time, they're almost helping you to bring about that reality, because you're noticing their presence and you're noticing this is happening. By the noticing, you're helping create. But then there's overage on this side, that it serves no purpose other than to abuse. So by that, you can evolve out of this, or you can, by the noticing of the overage, then you can correct it. I hope that didn't overload the people listening to this, but that's how I see. That's how these things have been happening in our own reality that match what we're talking about. Huh.
All right. I think we can go into questions with the other guy now, because I think we've done enough of speculating on metaphysics and those kind of concepts for people today.
Yeah. Sorry, folks, for overloading you like that, but this is how my essence brings it through. It doesn't always make sense to people, but the fact that we were able to put this in a show like this, I think, is actually quite profound, because it links the video game world and links this overall metaphysical concept. And I feel that was the intention all along, right there, is to by the writers and by their own souls bringing in this information. So bringing in that overall sense of self. So, okay, Ben Ortfoil, before I start babbling any further, you want to come in? Okay. Yeah, again, to recap for the viewers that have seen him on other shows like Interstellar Council and other lifting episodes, he is an elemental. He's about this big, and he looks like a bug, like leaf, almost like formation. Other ones, he says, look like dead leaves that blow around. And he sits on our plum tree out in our yard. He is from an area of New York, I believe it's Harlem Park, where he's spoken to Moses before. And he came through several months back for myself on Interstellar Council, and for me and Joanna, where he spoke about the elementals and the alien conflicts that were going on. Again, not going into it here because we've already done it, but so Ben Ortfoil. Yes, I know it's about time. Yeah, shush. Okay, let's see. He goes, now that you've said your piece, I'll say mine. Okay, yeah. All right, I will turn off screen share. And okay, Ben Ortfoil. Okay. Oh, he's pointing out that I got severe cotton mouth. Tarang Kal was actually trying to insert himself in the conversation as well, even though he would have been probably more appropriate to this episode. It's not at a stage yet where it's balanced enough to try that for a little bit, like I did on Interstellar Council once. So Ben Ortfoil, you're welcome to come through. Okay. Ooh. He goes, have you concluded your dissertation? Yes. Okay. That's his area of humor right there. So,
yep.
But he's actually on the back of my head right here. He's sitting right here. So
he's giving me some major Jiminy Cricket vibes.
Yeah, that's kind of like yeah. He kind of reminds me of Jiminy Cricket too. Yeah, and he's all about this big and has kind of like a beetle leaf cricket look. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Indeed. Yes. He has finally ended his dissertation. Yes, but in this, he has been most correct, and you have too, Ryan. This is a very apt topic for not only as what has been going on for him and Joanna personally, but for others in their private situations. For when this will air, this will be most apt for those seeking to learn this particular topic in the realm of metaphysics. In this, I can go into questions, and if you like, because the information as a whole has been uttered.
Okay. Now, do you yourself have experience with this sort of melding of the self into the over self into a new self?
Indeed, yes. I have seen this happen multiple times within the elemental realms and giants and galactic as well. Not only with the fusion of two people, where sometimes they're artificially fused, or like he has not used the example in his Star Trek Voyager program, where the character of Neelix and Tuvok were fused with the transporter and created an elemental being. That has actually happened in history, but with also the state of Chim, that is actually quite interesting. Also, the fusion of these many concepts, bringing out also what is in your genes that most serve as well. Say like the Kyber and the Dunmer sort of fusion. This would have been not only within his genes, but it also would have been another being as well that fused into himself, maybe another expression, as he said. I myself have not dealt with that personally in me, but I've seen dragon beings do this to where they are bringing in other dimensions of themselves and fusing with other beings that are of the same or similar wavelength, very much as the examples he used with the Japanese animation and the like. This has indeed happened in front of my eyes as well. Say also, here's an example that you two have not done yet. Say if you have two dying beings, dying, quote unquote, say that each trait in each one, cannot survive without the other. They then will fuse into one. Say also in your Star Trek program, where it was the enemy within, where Kirk split into two and they could not survive outside of each other and they had to be fused to the transporter back again. Yes, this also has taken place in history in that way, in the reverse. But the one that I am speaking of is, say, some people would call this codependency, but that is not the right choice of words. It is more like an energetic syncing, whereas two people will go into one. Now, go back in time billions of years to when the Creator Council created different beings like yourselves and myself as well. Say that within this, they were of the same oversoul and they were split apart and then came together kind of like taffy, pulled apart like taffy and came back together as soulmates. That is a true concept. But there are also beings out there that do not have their own soulmate because they are it within themselves. This is where they have merged with that in the actuality, in the here and now. And then also you have other aspects of a different oversouls that can also fusing those two oversouls and going in the reverse direction. I know this is confusing, but this is what I personally have witnessed in my long life.
All right, thank you. Now, your people, who I've really not been introduced to properly, you're of the elemental groups, and you must oversee some form of nature magic, as all elementals do. And would you like to speak on what your group does out in nature to sort of?
We maintain the different areas of nature. We help maintain balance and order, and also help with the cycles of life and death. We also say if one of our own dies, it goes into the overall cycle of life and death. Say between spring, summer, autumn, and winter, you have that cycle. We help govern over that natural cycle. This is why we find in abhorrence the different, say, interruptions to that cycle. Say your poisons, say your foreign energies, say your bad technologies that pollute the atmosphere, say your unnatural extensions of different weather patterns, such as your heart and the like. Poisons like your weed sprays, poisons like your foods that exit your cells and then go back into nature. These are things that would harm ourselves, and also just like the situation that you did not completely want aired before this, the denigration and the erasure of my people from the area in which you say. I will not go into detail since you did not want this, but you also get the idea. He was also correct in his assertion with the image at your Disney, whereas the demon crushing the flower beings, that is the epitome of the elemental alien war, as he has come to call it. This and also through the intermediary human servants. Your Orion contingency originally wanted this whole planet irradiated in radiation that they could survive and thrive in, very much like their native Nibiru. This was never to happen. This is why they tried to spark nuclear conflicts. This is also why Chernobyl went up in smoke. This is exactly what they wanted to denigrate. But you may ask also, why would the nuclear fusion then help say plants? Plants and the elementals are attempting to absorb it and buffer it so that it does not go into other dimensional states. Because nuclear energy then can form any and all constructs within it. Say you have a nuclear isotope. This is something we are important to as well, but have to buffer. Say you have a nuclear isotope. Say you have an elemental, like a gnome, like the ones in Fukushima, for instance, when this went off. Those gnomes then began to change and mutate and look almost like they were covered in nuclear radiated water. They began to mutate and change and become infected away from that of their original energetic template. This has happened on multiple occasions around nuclear sites, even ones that are benign or seemingly benign. Like your Chernobyl, that accident, it was not. This was more Orion and Sirian intrusions in that area. The animals around have begun either to degrade or the trees have begun to mutate. My own people were even there to witness this. These are strange aberrations within your culture that we attempt to curb. There are other dimensional beings that ask for our help on occasion in this particular area as well. But to sum up, we help balance the cycles of nature.
Okay, thank you. So with your view of the concepts that we talked about today, do you have a feeling that most souls, when they come in as a human, gain enough to where they gain enough like understanding where they go back and then they kind of do that whole mantling of their previous higher self?
Yes, there are some that do, some that do not, depending on what they came here to do. Even though that is part of it, there's also other mission parameters that some people have come in to do. It's very much like in your Star Wars prophesied lore with your Vader character, where it was not necessarily told whether he would be good or evil, and it ended up being both ends of the spectrum you see. So there is a bit of malleability to it. But for the overall most part, yes, to answer your question.
All right, thank you. And the final question for all these Elder Scrolls lore videos is, which race would you play if you were playing the Elder Scrolls?
This is actually quite interesting. I would play something not necessarily like myself. I would play more of as some of your, say, Viking or Nordic type of races, since I myself have not lived within an expressional value. As such, I would literally play as one of them.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and blessings to all of you and listening to this. Yes. Oh, yeah. He was sitting on the back of my head. He was right here. But since he was small enough, he was sitting on the brainstem. So he's the only one of the only ones that doesn't go through my crystal to do channeling, because he's
that's a little kind of creepy.
Yeah, he was like this on the back of my head, like this. So, but he was like this. He goes, creepy only under particular circumstances. Circumstances not mine. Okay, that's what he just. Okay, that's his idea of joke. Okay, and being sarcastic. So
Yeah.
he's a treasure trove of knowledge. When we've talked to him, he was talking about like the deadliness of sprays and chemicals and all this other stuff. So it was
Yeah.
and pollutants and all this other stuff. So to his own people. So and certain things like Roundup, I found out, have the ability to denigrate his cycle to where the components of, say, a dead version of himself or themselves can't integrate back into nature properly, and it can't. Like some of these pollutants prevent some of those cycles from taking place. This is what the Orions wanted all along, because they wanted that system to halt. So they wanted a deadened world very much like the one they came from. Why, I don't know, but that's what they thrive in. So reptilians thrive in deserts and nature lacking environments too. So at least the Draco in them do. So okay, I don't know if you have anything else to add to this program. We can take it out, Ryan.
Not really. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been a wonderful topic, and I hope everyone is doing well out there on their personal journey.
Yes, I say the same, and thank you all for watching this episode. Hopefully you got a lot out of this and didn't your eyes didn't glaze over while we were trying to explain these things. So thank you, everybody, for listening and watching to this program, and for those that eventually will subscribe to our platform and have. So thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya. Okay.
Isaac is also outside. His edifice is out there, and Scrumpy's is outside too. Like the forest person. So
Do you know what scrumpy is a word for?
oh no, what is it? I didn't look it up.
In reality, it's an alcoholic cider beverage that's like extremely strong for ciders in Britain.
Oh God, that's funny. That would be a forest person that would use that. Yeah. So that's funny. I did not know that. So he's laughing out there too. I can hear him laughing. So yeah.
Yeah.